Tyler, thanks so much for being on the show, man. Would you mind just kicking us off with a brief intro on your background?
Yeah, happy to, Roland, and thanks a ton for having me, man. Honored to be on and dig into what's happening in the industry. I've been in the fintech kind of community financial institution space for over a decade, almost a decade and a half now, and really built my background around helping FIs go through digital transformation. And I've worked in every facet of things on the fintech side, or many of them, I should say. I've worked in loan origination, deposit account opening, commercial treasury onboarding, core and integration technology, and now with Vertice, really diving into the use of AI, right, and how that can enhance what a bank or a credit union is able to do for their member or customer base. And so, really love the community FI space, right? It's something I fell in love with a long time ago, and have continued to keep digging in deeper and deeper there on my side.
Awesome. Love it. You've been around. So you talked a little bit about how, AI is at play here. Well, actually, it is in a big way. And, when I dug into what you guys did, I went and watched your financial brand talk, which you guys killed it, by the way. Really thought you guys did a good job. This is cheesy to say, but I actually did get real life goosebumps when it clicked for me, when I realized what you guys were doing and how you guys are doing it. It's very cool. Would you just explain to the audience what you guys do as if you're talking to your neighbor who, let's say is an architect or doesn't work in the industry?
Yeah, no, and we've had an opportunity to do some really fun presentations in the last year or two. Vertis, our mission, we think about what we do is we want to help financial institutions know, grow, and kind of measure their customer base or membership better. And if we were to talk to anybody on the street, we'd basically tell them, look, we're taking data that a bank or credit union has access to and helping make it actionable so that the institution can deepen and grow their relationships and do that in a way that doesn't burden the institution with the need to hire a whole bunch of folks, right? To go out and bring in a team of data scientists. Ultimately, what we want to do is help them drive and grow deeper relationships with the people that they serve. So, and do that in a way that, once again, is really turnkey, easy to do.
Awesome. So you guys aren't the first ones to come along and say data is it's the new oil, right? It's gold. There's so much opportunity within the data. And what I've seen, I've been in the space for 20 years. What I've seen where the data kind of dream falls on the ground is integration. And I think we're really in a totally new era now than we were, let's say, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, in terms of systems having to play nicely together, institutions, banks, and credit unions demanding the vendors of the world to play nice with their ecosystem. So I guess, are you guys able to solve for that integration challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question, Roland. I recently had a discussion with some industry folks about this. I spent a number of years in the kind of core integration, data lake, data warehouse space, right? And so very familiar with many of the challenges of, how do you connect all these disparate systems, particularly back to the core, right? And get them to speak to each other. Um, AI and what it can do for not just banking and the financial services space, but more broadly, changes the dynamic, I think, a little bit around, um, the need for some of the, chunky, big kind of data lake, data warehouse projects. And there's others out there might disagree with me on this, but for some use cases, that type of heavy, robust infrastructure just isn't necessary anymore. For Vertis in particular, we're a bit unique in that we don't need real-time integrations to get the data that serves our AI models, and so we take that in via batch update. So we kind of break the mold today, I'd say, in terms of, the lift to get up and running and kind of what banks or credit unions need to do to use the system. Where integrations are key for us is downstream of us, and so being able to take outputs from what we do and kick it into, say, a CRM or a constant contact or something like that. But um, it's been interesting to see how some of that conversation around integration and what that looks like has changed even in the last 2 or 3 years. So, I don't know for many banks. This conversation I was having recently, was talking with an institution that said, "Man, we spent 3 years and probably a couple $1,000,000 trying to build this data lake, data warehouse, and this integration layer. And, we contracted with a group to come in and do it for us, and we've got one of those integrations with a core vendor live today." And that's not uncommon. And it's not that that service provider that they chose, didn't do a good job, right? Or it doesn't have the skill set to build those integrations. It is insanely complex, and the sands and the goal lines keep moving, right, in some of
Hmm.
those data sets and in how some of those
Right.
integrations are structured, and so it's a hard thing to do. Um, AI is shifting what teams can come in and do quickly in terms of hitting endpoints, writing code to get data out of those endpoints, and so I think we're gonna keep seeing an interesting evolution in the coming, 12, 24, 36 months around what does an integration mean in terms of how you build it compared to maybe
Hmm.
how we'd done it 5 years ago? Probably a bit of a tangent, but I went down this rabbit hole recently with somebody, and it's just been an interesting evolution of where we were a couple years ago and where they think some of this is going to go in the coming years.
Yeah. I mean, AI is forcing everyone to kind of underscore how they are evaluating these huge projects.
Yeah.
Like, just what you could do with prompts is
Oh,
incredible.
prompts is crazy, and the ability. One of the individuals I was talking to was describing them as throwaway code, right? Of like, hey, you've got you have a published API, right? You're hitting that API for a particular reason at that point in time, right? If you've got the ability to build that call code in real time, right? And hit it against that endpoint and get the data out that you need, the need to maintain a large, robust infrastructure somewhat comes down, right? And it's not that there's not use cases for that. I want to be real clear. There's some very good real-time use cases where you want that infrastructure. For us, once again, speaking from Vertice's perspective, it's not something that's critical to us, so we're able to lean in a slightly different way when you think about batch updates and then some of those downstream things.
So you're able to do more with less,
Yeah, yeah, and I
like
think we're
way
going to see
less.
many. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we're going to see many fintechs hopefully come to that realization in the next few years too, is that some of these tasks that used to take them a whole lot of resources, right, and a whole lot of effort to maintain, hopefully that hurdle comes down for them, which is good for
Sure.
everybody.
No, that makes sense. So let me ask you about just your read on financial institutions when you're meeting with them. There was a period where AI kind of came out ahead of its time. Like it had a flash in the pan moment in banking. I don't know, 5 years ago. And what I think ended up happening was the market looked at what was being stood up in front of them, and they were like, This isn't really AI." Are leaders fatigued with AI, or are they still intrigued and trying to solution and use case it right now?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of the above, Roland. What I see is there's this big umbrella of AI in the market. And I think it's helpful when we get into conversations with FIs to help define what is AI, right? Is this a machine learning model? Is this a large language generative AI model? Is this, a different use of AI, right?
Okay.
Across their
Start with
ecosystem.
the basics.
Yeah, so we
Sure.
find that often it's about starting with the basics because when you dig into it, and I was on with probably a group of 180 odd banks yesterday, and I asked a question. It was a conversation about AI in general and what are some of the applications. And I said, how many of you are using AI in your institution today? And a handful raised their hand, and that aligns with what we see in the market in direct conversations. Is some folks have an AI policy, some folks are using it today. Maybe they've dabbled with getting their team some Chat GPT licenses, right? Um, but when you really start peeling it back, particularly in the area of machine learning models, right? Banks and credit unions have been using that for decades, right? FICO is a great example. That's a predictive model, kind of machine learning model around behaviors from a credit perspective to understand, hey, is Roland credit worthy for, this auto loan or a mortgage or whatever it is. And so I think banks have been using AI in various forms for decades potentially. So there's use cases of AI or AI adjacent processes that many institutions already have in place. What we see is the tipping point for many is starting to think about generative AI, right? And how do we use that to get into potential customer or member facing interactions or even decision making. And that's where I think people start to get, a little anxious. Um, you hit the nail on the head. There was, broadly speaking, probably, 5, 6, 7 years ago, some booms around AI and the ability to do some neat things there. Some of the early, very early in the financial services space. And then it dropped off a little bit as people started to go back and refine those use cases. And now, if that was a flash in the pan, now we have a mushroom cloud, right? I mean, it's like it's exploded. I mean, it's truly exploded everywhere. And it's a challenge for institutions. I was talking with a bank down in Georgia recently, and they said, "Man, we've been trying to solve this use case around lending with AI." And um, I was talking to this great fintech and thought they had it solved. They showed me a
Right.
demo; it looked beautiful.
Right.
2 weeks later, I reached back out to try and move things forward with them, and they weren't there. And
Boy.
it's what I call the exploding fintech scenario, right? Which isn't new, right? Anytime a new technologies come out, there's always this kind of flash in the pan, right? Or kind of explosion of options. And what we're seeing a lot is because AI allows people now to generate demo platforms or even the framework of a
Websites,
product, website, all of it, right? You can
contracts.
generate content, everything. They could say, "Oh, we've got a legal team," right? It's a
Sure.
agent in the background.
Vaporware
Um,
on steroids.
it's vaporware on steroids, and so I do think there is an element in the market that any banking leader is sifting through to say, "Hey, is this real?" Right? Do you actually have customers? Do you have a product that I can see and touch and feel?
So
And
when they ask for a reference and the sales guy says, "Hey, what's that over there?" That's
yeah,
maybe
oh,
your
squirrel,
sign to run.
squirrel. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
run the other way.
And that's a lot of what we end up coaching people on. The presentation I gave this week was around, hey, what kinds of questions, right, should you start asking these fintechs? Because it's like the internet.com boom in the late 90s, right? There were a ton of
Yeah.
promises made. And so bankers just have to be diligent about digging a couple layers deeper.
So with companies who are really talking a lot about AI, is there an extra level of due diligence you recommend bankers perform than what they did pre ChatGPT?
Yes. There's a couple pieces to it. One is we're seeing a lot of companies pivot, I would say, or bolt on AI, right? It's like, oh, we're an AI company, right? And if you start drilling down, what you realize is maybe they're a 10, 15-year-old company that was a very, I'll say analog alongside AI is the use case here, but say they're more kind of analog platform that was a more manual platform, and they've tried to bolt AI on top of it. So I think there's a lot of questions banking leaders should be asking around, hey, was this built from the ground up with AI, right? Or is this a bolt on? And we run into this in our space in particular, and I'm not going to throw other companies under the bus, but there's a number that live in kind of the data and analytics space that had great dashboards and that kind of thing that all of a sudden now are saying like, oh, we're an AI company. Like we have AI, right? And it's bolted on top of a legacy analytics platform or a dashboarding platform. And what we see, this is just speaking from our space and experience, is that when you get that, the user experience at the end of the day, and I'm sure this is true with any other bolt on use of AI, isn't quite as smooth as if a platform was built from the ground up with AI in mind, because there's all kinds of
Sure.
product framework and foundational coding pieces that should be in place, right, to deliver a better experience for the end
Yeah.
users. And so that's one piece is understanding, was this foundationally built on AI or is this a bolt-on piece for you? And
Sure.
it's not that AI can't advance legacy platforms. It certainly can. But I think what we've seen in the markets is that when that comes out, it's not quite always as promised. So
Yep.
ask questions about origins of AI in the company. You definitely want to drill down, and particularly if you're getting into um, deep data sets with AI, right? Or customer facing interactions, make sure you do a whole lot of vettings on the training of the models, right? Where were they built? How were they built? What data are they ingesting? And if they're ingesting data from you, is it PII, right? Are you getting that layer into the framework of the data for the institution, or is it not? And if it is, where's that data going, right? Because there are certainly, I think, very relevant concerns of if I'm pushing, privileged information into a model, right, that is not contained or firewalled or kind of
Yep.
in the walled garden, if you will, is it gonna go out to outside sources, and is that a threat from a risk and security standpoint for my customers and also for me in my business, right? And is my customer information all of a sudden gonna be accessible by some of my competitors? So I think there's some very real questions around data that should be asked anyway, right? Whether it's an AI platform, but the use of AI, right, in some of those interactions should push banks to do you know,
Makes
a
sense.
solid dig. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know there's also a real push to really just leverage your own data with AI and train on your own stuff. Banks have so much information. They have such a
Oh,
holistic picture on many milestones and attributes
it's
of their
amazing.
customers' lives that, it's if you can keep it all contained within the four walls of your institution, then you should largely be able to avoid that, I would imagine.
Very much. Yes. And that's why I called out, hey, look, ask where's this data going, right? How is it being used? Is it going outside your four walls? Hopefully the answer is no.
Right.
If it's not no, that's an immediate red flag and walk away, right? Or if you can't guarantee that you've got your data isolated somewhere. It is amazing. And when I stepped into the community banking and credit union world, in the last decade, it kind of blew me away how much data is there. I mean, you look at the other industries, they're only rivaled by, probably healthcare and insurance in terms of the depth of data. Now you're getting into, mobile phone providers and some of the big fintechs, they're probably starting to get there too. But in terms of regulated industries, right, that need to have some pretty deep concerns around PII, man, banking has such a rich data set. And if an institution can tap into that, it's amazing. It's one of the things I love doing with our customers at Vertice in particular is when they see the lights turn on of, oh, I can see these data points. Like how did we figure this out? And it's like, oh, it's in your data. It's all here. You just haven't had the team of data scientists that, B of A or JP Morgan or, Navy Federal Credit Unions had before, right?
Right.
And so it's an unlock for them that's just, totally
So
eye opening.
cool. So cool. Yeah, even just starting Propagate, my ability to accelerate getting just the kinda unsexy tasks done of running your
Yeah.
own business, AI has been such an enabler for us. It's incredible. It's same thing across so many sectors, obviously. I mean, preaching to the choir here. One thing I wanna draw you out on a little bit is a service that I've heard you guys offer, and I think it dovetails with what we're talking about, and keep me honest here, but at a high level, what I'm talking about is your ability to look for more customers, more members in your target markets.
Yeah.
How do you take this third party data that you guys, I'm guessing, are working with and figure out from there what relevant products are?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So, we start with a foundational understanding of the existing customer base or membership at a bank or a credit union and helping them understand through all that data we just talked about, right? Who are their account holders, right? What do they look and feel like, right? What are the patterns that we see for them? We once we get that done, we can take that data and really append some third party information that's kind of market behavioral data to help translate that into, hey, here's a market profile for what some of your best customers and members look like and folks that you want to continue to expand your market for. And so we can then take that and translate it and use our same predictive modeling out in the market and say, hey, great, we know these are the flags and things that show us somebody's in market for XYZ product, HELOC, mortgage, credit card, checking product, whatever it is. And then we can help find those folks in a given zip code or set of markets, right? And give the bank or the credit union the ability to go out and be very targeted in that outreach and in that marketing effort instead of the traditional spray and pray. And so we are using a combination of first party data from the institution and then some third party data from folks like Experian and others to say, hey, how do we understand and what your customer base looks and feels like? And then how do we go find good ones out there? And another thing we do is that differentiates us a little bit because there are folks you can go buy a list from somebody, right? And say, hey, I want to go
Mhm.
market in Des Moines, right?
Sure.
We differentiate in our predictive modeling to say, hey, is Roland in market for whatever product's a priority for you as an organization right now? And then we also can compare them to say, hey, how do they compare and look and feel like your kind of good long-term customers at your institution or members, right? And so we put people on two axes, which is one is, can you land them for a product? And the other is, are they going to be a good fit for you long term? Right. And so we want to try and eliminate the scenarios of creating what we call zombie checking account members, right? Of, hey, you went out or the zombie CD and like
Oh
you
yeah,
landed them for that
account
particular product.
dormancy is a
Totally.
huge
Huge
problem.
challenge, huge drain. For a bank, it drives profitability down through the floor, right? For a
Yeah, I
credit
think
union, they don't get the engagement.
it's like 25 to 40% in that range
Massive.
become inactive.
And so that's what we want to try and avoid is people just chasing a specific product. And so that helps differentiate what we do. And we think about, we call it, it's our acquire module within Vertice, but it's all about finding good long-term fits for the institution and ultimately providing better value to the customer, right? To the prospect that you're trying to bring in. Because, look, as a consumer of financial products, I'd ideally don't want to have, 4, 5, 6 different banking relationships. I don't want to just go chase a CD here because it's giving me the best rate. I want to find an institution that checks that box, sure, but I also know is going to be a good long-term fit for me. So we think it creates a better win-win long-term for both sides.
I like that. I think that's really compelling, and I mean anybody in the growth mindset at an organization, I think should be looking for some way of doing this, whether it's with you guys or a hodgepodge of
Yeah. Oh,
solutions,
very much.
whatever
Yeah.
whatever it may be. Uh, so one of the earlier questions that I asked was around people turning data into information and then turning that information into action. The campaigns that are going out and securing new members, exposing new products, so on and so forth. How do people do this today in 2026?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one we when we built our platform at Vertus, we tried to make sure we were thinking holistically about the our customer, bank or credit union's experience because it's the beautiful thing about AI, right? Is it can take large data sets and analyze it insanely fast and surface these insights in ways that an institution's never been able to before. And this is true outside of just banking. It's awesome to get the insights. The question then is how do you operationalize that, right? How do you scale the execution of what do I do with this data and this insight now? And for some institutions that can be paralyzing. I'm saying like, man, I've got all this great insight now. What do I do with it? It's a paradigm shift for many of them, right? I'll use one of our examples from a current client that we work with. And they first came to us, they did 1 to 3 generic email campaigns a quarter. And so everybody got the checking campaign, everybody got the HELOC campaign. And they said, look, we don't have any way to delineate in the membership, like who gets what campaign. And they said, we'd love to get to the point where we could do maybe 5 or 10 or 15 campaigns a quarter, right? But we've got to think about for the marketing team, yeah, you give me this amazing list. Now what do we do with it? And I think it's a question every institution should ask if they're thinking about implementing a new technology, but particular one in AI is great. If it's something around insights, right? And analytics for the institution, what are you going to do with it? Because if you generate a great list or a great data set, right, and analyze it and get some good information out of it, but you don't have a way to then take that through to action to impact a change, what are you getting out of the platform? So for us,
Yeah.
where we dug in there is to say, great, we're all about can we tell you who's in market for a particular product or service? But we wanted to make sure the sales team, the marketing team, whoever it is that's actioning out that touch point with the client on their side can do that at scale. And so that meant we had to help think through how do you create a marketing campaign framework, right? How do you enable a marketing team to create content that's highly personalized at scale? Because the other thing the age we live in right now is that the boomer and the college student are all using iPhones now. It's not just the millennials, right? And it's every generation. And they all now expect to be spoken to as if you know exactly who they are. And look, this thing in my pocket, which tells me and Haley that our youngest Jack's probably almost, out of diapers before we realize it. We need to go get a pickup order at Target, right? That's the industry norm, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
more broadly. And so we've got to figure out as a financial services industry how we deliver that same result. So for us at Vertus, that meant helping the marketing teams create the content make sure they could get a compliance check against that internally, which we offer. And then to your point earlier, talking about integrations and where it is key for us is great, great. You've got your content for your digital banking platform, for your email campaign, for your, direct mailer, or for a call script, right, from the retail or the commercial banking team. How do you push that data downstream to an email marketing platform, a digital banking platform, or something else? So it's really critical, Roland. And once again, it's not just for us at Vertice, it's any platform. A bank or credit union should say, hey, how am I then scaling this action out within my organization?
No, I think that's great, and everybody should be thinking about that and making peace with that reality and pivoting, where they need to in relation to it. So, yeah,
The
there's nothing that makes me realize that I'm getting personalized marketing than like pharmaceutical commercials.
oh, so much. Yeah, yeah. I'm almost hitting 40, and they clearly know I'm almost hitting
Yeah,
40
yeah, yeah,
with every ad I'm served up.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. All the stock images and video, they all look like they're like me and my friends.
Absolutely. Going out for bike rides or rock climbing, man. That's it. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
it's, I think it's an interesting point you bring up there. You didn't ask this question, but I'm going to jump on it a little bit is in that personalization process, right? Folks want to make sure their organization isn't just serving up the same content as the competing organization down the street and getting through some of that AI slop that we hear about, right? Of like, oh, the generic campaign that's created. So I think it's another key thing. Once again, whether it's us or anyone else, if you're using an AI platform to help you generate content, from a risk management compliance standpoint, make sure you check the boxes and that they can check the box for you there, but also make sure you're able to put your brand stamp and your product stamp, right, on the content that's being created. And that's really, really key, right? Because what you don't want is the same generic AI content that somebody else is throwing out there, right? You want to be able to drive something that does feel genuine, right? And
mhm,
that's a balance for anyone in the content space now. And look, that's what community banks and credit unions are built off of is this sense that, hey, I know who Roland is, right? And I've invested in building a relationship with you. And it's one of the things I'm excited about in terms of what AI can do in the space is it can help drive some of that personalization and arm a banker at a bank or a team member at a credit union to focus on the relationship with you, not just the back office task, right? And that's where I think you can differentiate in terms of how you create the content, how it's delivered out to the end customer, and how it enhances that relationship, not just, oh, hey, we're supposed to do a drip
sure,
campaign and get an email out. Make
yep.
sure we're doing it.
Well, how do you do AI kind of supported campaigns at scale while keeping the human in the loop? Because
Yeah.
I mean, we've all seen and used ChatGPT to draft up, some town hall messaging or something, and what you get is very AI feeling and feels very disingenuine and is missing that like that special je ne sais quoi human element that makes it feel real and powerful and impactful. You see this on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm not going to name any names, but people doing these AI posts, and
Absolutely.
it's just not, it just doesn't pack a punch. So how do people do this at scale with AI powering a lot of it while keeping humans in the loop and it being meaningful?
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of discussion in the industry right now about, oh, we just going to have all AI bankers in, the next 10 years, right? And
All branches are going away. Why would you
all
need a
branches
branch?
ago,
We have
never need a
ATMs.
branch. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right. Yeah, we're good.
right.
You never need to have another human work at the bank ever, right? Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Certainly not in the way that the kind of bleeding edge, talking heads are discussing it, right? I spent a number of years before I got into the fintech space with community FIs in the marketing tech space, and what I certainly came to appreciate there was the art of marketing, right? And the art of making sure we're creating content and branding and messaging that feels genuine or connects with our audience. And it's something that we've taken to heart as we've built out, the compose function within Vertis of This is not something that we're doing in a vacuum without the FI's leadership and marketing teams being very involved in, right? They have complete control from beginning to end of, on a given campaign, which products are you focusing on? Which channels do you want to use as part of this? As you create the content, our goal isn't to replace your marketing team. It's to give them a tool to accelerate content creation and give them the ability to edit and refine that in a way so that it already inherently ingests the brand voice for your particular institution. But also, and I think this is really key, giving the content teams or the marketing team or an agency, perhaps if an outside group's working with an institution on it, to very quickly get in and edit it in real time, right? And give you that human touch on it. And what we're seeing is when you combine a tool that helps you get on brand messaging to a certain point, right? Then you've got the human in the loop, as you called out, um, to be able to step in and make those tweaks, right? Because that's where there is an art to marketing, right? While we can give you demographic information of, Tyler's a millennial that fits in this age range and he likes to be spoken to like this, and AI can give you some good stuff there, right? There's still unique things about your brand, right? Or specific things that are going on in your community that might be relevant to that campaign that you want to layer in. So our tool gives them the ability to stay at that granular level of control while also giving them the power of doing some generative AI work at scale to create content.
That's great. Okay, well, this has been awesome having you on the show, Tyler. Thank you so much. You guys are growing like crazy. How many customers did
Yeah.
you guys sign in 25?
Yeah, we doubled our customer base last year. We're up to a little over 60 now. We're looking to do the same thing again this year. We've got amazing traction in the credit union world. We've been in that space for almost 3.5 years. We expanded into the banking space last year, and have seen great initial response from that community as well. So we're excited to keep leaning in. Yeah, and ultimately, allow many of these community FIs to compete with the bigs, right? And I think that's really core to our mission is we're not working with your top 5 institutions, right? We're about, hey, how can you help the Main Street financial institutions stay relevant? Give them the tools to compete in an era where it feels in the market, to any consumer, not just in the banking space, like big techs everywhere, right? We want to give folks the ability to stay on par. So,
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. Where can people learn about what you guys are doing?
yeah. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on our website, verticeanalytics.ai. You could shoot me an email, Tyler B at verticeanalytics.ai. And I'm always happy rolling to get on and nerd out and chat about data and analytics and all things fintech. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. We love helping people solve problems and once again, just being part of the industry conversation right now. It's an exciting time in
Totally.
fintech. It's so much change, right? And there's going to be a whole lot that evolves over the next 5 years. But I think there's a real opportunity for community FIs to play a really important role in that.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Roland.
Hey, thanks for being here. If you or someone else you know would like to explore coming on the show, fill out a contact form at propagatefintech.com and we can explore some content ideas with you. Also, we are an end-to-end marketing and PR firm only supporting the bank industry. So if you would like to explore going deeper with Propagate, again, feel free to reach out to us and we can explore whatever that you are working on. See you on the next one.